you ever been in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant attachment style and maybe found yourself in sort of more of a situationship over time and found that as time progressed and more connection, more closeness, or more vulnerability was required, that suddenly it seemed like the dismissive avoidance slowly pulled away. And in fact, it actually spilled all the way into your sex life and your relationship with physical and sexual intimacy. So, in this video, if this is something you've experienced or can understand, or perhaps you are a DA and you're sort of trying to discover a little bit more about yourself, we are going to talk about the key factors that trigger dismissive avoidant attachment style individuals in their relationship to sex. So this is something that I get requests for all the time. People ask me so many questions about attachment styles and sex. We actually have a full course on this that you can check out for free for 14 days. We're doing a Black Friday sale right now. You literally get access to the entire school, all of our 60 plus courses, but especially this course about attachment styles and sex. And it also gives you access for that 14 days to 4 live weekly webinars with myself. If you want to come in, ask me any questions, you can video chat, any of that stuff. So I want to talk about specifically how these things affect dismissive avoidance. So dismissive avoidants have really big core wounds around intimacy. And those core wounds are things like vulnerability equals I am unsafe. If I'm too vulnerable, then I will be weak. If I'm too vulnerable and I am seen too much, somebody will come to know that I am defective. So all of those, I am weak, I am unsafe, I am defective, those are big core wounds for dismissive avoidance, and they play a massive role in sex. Dismissive avoidants also feel afraid of being trapped or helpless or pressured. Being pressured can really trigger some of these dynamics. And so something that often takes place for DAs in general is this subconscious. It's not something conscious. It's not premeditated. But this dynamic of when they start bonding with somebody and connecting with somebody, the more emotional intimacy is there, the more depth of connection is there over time, and especially the more time that passes, when DAs start to actually form like an attachment pairing or an attachment bond to somebody, they start to feel triggered and afraid. They start to literally feel like, oh my goodness, this dynamic is here. And those core wounds often get triggered. It's like, whoa, if I'm too vulnerable, all these bad things will happen. Where does this come from? This comes from their conditioning, right? Their subconscious programming in childhood. So when they are repeatedly vulnerable as children and they are repeatedly met with some form of emotional neglect, then you see this dynamic of like dismissive avoidance, feeling the need to shut down, the need to pull away because of these things taking place. And so that's how they learn to cope. And so this is what will come online as a coping mechanism the moment they reattach at a deep level that mirrors the depth of attachment that they had with their caregivers in childhood. And of course, in our adult lives, that becomes our primary attachment figure relationships. So what essentially takes place is, and I'm going to give a list of scenarios that can actually trigger these things for dismissive avoidance, because there are many, and I've seen them a lot over the years with different individuals and different conversations I've had with clients in my practice. One of the big ones is when there's a lot of vulnerability around sex, like when there's a lot of actual intimacy, a lot of closeness, a lot of deep connection, a lot of like love or care, like when those feelings are really heightened and then that gets brought into sex, dismissive avoidance can literally have a huge shutdown after. And it's not because they didn't necessarily like enjoy the depth of connection in the experience, but because the next day they felt so vulnerable and it felt unsafe and scary. And so they'll often shut down to go into this like self-protection mode. Another big one is if there starts becoming pressure around sex. I might just make a whole separate video for that. But if sex starts changing in a relationship between two attachment styles and one person starts bringing it up, like we're not having sex enough, we're not sleeping together enough, and starts pressuring it, DAs will for sure feel trapped and pressured and all these things that cause them to feel like they need to push somebody away to maintain that freedom, to get rid of that feeling of pressure. And it can actually wreak havoc on the sex life with a dismissive avoidant, especially in a relationship. And another huge thing is if there's any kind of issue around sex, like if there's less sex or sex isn't going so well, or there's problems occurring during sex, then we can see dismissive avoidants put a lot of pressure on themselves and feel like they're defective because it's that big core wound. And you'll see that this defectiveness core wound will cause them to feel all the shame that they're now associating emotionally with sex because their subconscious mind is an association making machine. If we start going into an experience as people that makes us feel ashamed, we learn to feel the emotion of shame when we think about that experience again. That's how the mind is working essentially. And so dismissive avoidance will start to think about having sex with somebody and they'll feel shame or they'll feel fear or they'll feel you know, this need to shut down and protect themselves and stay safe because they're feeling unsafe. So you'll see these different dynamics that come about. Other like honorable mentions of situations that can come up is if they feel criticized about sex, that can be like, actually that shouldn't be an honorable mention. That should be one of the top four in there as potential problems and challenges. It can really make them feel again defective, not good enough, which can be really painful. Sometimes as well, dismissive avoidance will start feeling like incapable of meeting their partner's needs. So if a partner keeps saying we should be having sex more often, or these different things are coming up, if a DA doesn't realize that their core wounds are triggered and that that's causing them to pull away, instead they might just go, well, I just have different needs sexually and I don't get it and I'm not going to ever be able to meet this person's needs. And they can go into sort of this helplessness point of view, this feeling of being incapable. Again, they may shut down in this case or situation. And dismissive avoidance as well, in certain contexts, can start being really critical of themselves. They can really get into their own head around sex, especially if they feel like there's pressure or expectation, and it can really affect their ability to be present, to be in the moment, to enjoy sex. And it can really ruin the experience to a certain degree for DAs. So let me know what questions you have in the comments below. I have a whole course on this and then exactly what to do for each attachment style. It's called Attachment Styles and Sex. Again, you can check it out for free for 14 days. But it goes through how to reprogram these problems, what's healthy, what's unhealthy, how to have healthy boundaries around sex, how to express your needs around sex, how to do reconditioning work of your core wounds that are being brought into sex. It covers everything. But let me know as well what questions you have down below. And I'm going to try to go through and talk about some of the different challenges and like each of those ones that I mentioned, I'll try to talk about specifically for each one in the relationship to sex. So if a DA is feeling pressured, if a DA is feeling ashamed or criticized, like we'll talk about how to sort of move through some of those dynamics as well in the next few weeks to come here on YouTube also. So let me know any other questions you want to add to that. And again, if you are waiting in the meantime and also want to do a deep dive into the reconditioning part, that attachment styles and sex course that you can check out for free literally covers all attachment styles. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. And please subscribe if you're enjoying this channel. Thank you so much.